Hello everyone. Today I will make another video. Previously I made one video about software testing types, part 1, where I have explained 10 different types of software testing. Now I will make another video, software testing types, part 2. Here I will talk about three different types of software testing. Those are positive testing, negative testing, and boundary testing. And I will give the definition, I will explain, and I will give an example on those three different types of software testing. So the first one I will talk about is positive testing. Positive testing, the definition I have given here, testing the software application according to requirement is positive testing. So it's according to requirement, that is positive testing. Now let's say, this is an example, let's say there is a requirement. Users are able to log into the application with valid login credential. Now let's say this is an application, and the Facebook is the name. So the Facebook has a login page that takes ID and password, and if a user enter ID and password and click and login, then the user will be logged in to the application. So then, since this is Facebook, so user should be able to log into the Facebook application. So that's the requirement. Requirement is the requirement number 101. That's the requirement number, and the requirement is users are able to log into the application with valid login credential. And then there are two scenarios. Scenario 1, login with valid credential, and the scenario 2 is login with invalid credentials. The valid credential means I will put the valid ID and valid password. I will put valid ID and I will put valid password, and then I will click on login, and the system will be logged into the application. So then I will be able to log into the application. Now if that's according, that is according to the requirement. This is the requirement. The requirement says you put valid ID and valid password and you log in. Now I will test if the testing matches the requirement, and that is positive testing. According to the application, according to the requirement. Testing the application according to the requirement is positive testing. Whatever is said in the requirement, we will test that all the things that is said in the requirement matches. That is according to the requirement. That is positive testing. Now this one is against the requirement. This not said in the requirement. If we read the requirement clearly, it didn't say anywhere. It says users should not be able to log in without invalid login credential. That is not written anywhere. In the requirement it is written user should be able to log in with a valid credential. Now if we go with the requirement, according to the requirement, with the requirement, user should be able to log in with valid credential. And user should not be able to log in with invalid credentials. That is against the requirement. This is the requirement. This goes according to the requirement, and this goes against to the requirement. Whatever against to the requirement, that is negative testing. Testing the software application against the requirement, that is negative testing. Against the requirement, that is negative testing. So according to requirement, positive testing. Against the requirement, negative testing. This is an example. This is the requirement. This one goes according to the testing, according to the requirement, so that is positive testing. And this scenarios goes against the requirement, therefore that is negative testing. And this is an example I gave. If we put valid ID, valid password, click on login, then user should be able to log in. If we put valid ID, wrong password, or wrong ID, valid password, or valid ID, empty space, this is empty right now, I didn't put anything here, or both empty, and I click here, all those scenarios, user should not be able to log in. When we have a requirement and said test this requirement, we will test this scenario that user are able to log in with valid credential. We will also test user are not able to log in with invalid credentials. These are the 5 different scenarios that I have wrote. So this is scenario 2, this is scenario 1. So that is the difference between positive testing and negative testing. Positive testing means according to the requirement, and negative testing means against the requirement. Now what if? So according to the requirement 101, this is the requirement number. According to the requirement 101, checking users are able to log in with valid credential is positive testing, and checking users are not able to log in with the application with invalid IDs, that is negative testing. What if there is a requirement 102, there is this another requirement. What is there is another requirement says users are not able to log in into the application. Users are not able to log into the application with invalid login credentials. Users are not. This is requirement number 102. This is another requirement. This is one requirement, that the requirement number is 101. The requirement says users are able to log in with a valid credential, and we will test that with valid credential. We will test users are able to log in. That is positive testing. We will also test with invalid credentials, that user not able to log in. That is negative testing. So for requirement 101, this one positive testing, this a negative testing, and for requirement 102, this are positive testing and this one negative testing. For this requirement, these are according to the requirement. In the requirement, that is what it said. Users are not able to log in with invalid credentials, invalid login credentials. That is what is written on the requirement number 102. So testing this is positive testing, and testing this positive testing for this requirement. So for this requirement, these are positive testing and this is negative testing. Testing this one is negative testing, and testing these 5 scenarios is positive testing for 102. On the other hand, for requirement 101, this is positive testing and these are negative testing. And the definition is testing the application according to the requirement is positive testing. I understand I was able to explain. Normally, who write these requirements? Business analyst or product owner, or sometimes QA analyst also write requirements. When they write requirements, they usually write the positive scenarios in the requirement. User can write this way, or business analyst can write the requirement this way. That will be writing in the positive way, and they can also write the requirement this way. That would be writing the requirement negative way. So if requirements are written this way, then this is positive testing and this is negative testing. If requirements are written this way, then these are positive testing and this is negative testing. The definition is testing the application according to the requirement that is positive and against the requirement that is negative. I have given an example. My internet is slow, so I will not actually log in. I will not be putting the my actual valid ID and actual valid password. Click on login, then system will be logged in. But that I will not be showing. I have explained. That should be fine, I guess. Now I give another example. Let's say here I want to create a new Google account. So I have to fill this requirement. In the requirement says username should be only letters A to Z, number 0 to 9, and the special character it can take only one, that is dot. Any other special characters will not be taken into the username. That is in the requirement. So we will put here in this field, we will put a username that matches these scenarios, and if we click on next and if it takes, then it passes. So that would be the positive testing, because in the requirement it says the letter should be A to Z, number should be 0 to 9, and the period can be included in the username. Now if we try to create an account outside of this requirements, then system should not be able to, or system will not allow to create the username. So that would be negative testing. So this is another example. Now I will talk about, so I have explained what is positive testing. I also explained what is negative testing. It's very simple. According to a positive testing is according to the requirement. Whatever written in the requirement, we will check that that matches. Then that's positive testing. And we will also check, we will go against the requirement, and we will also check that is negative testing. Now boundary testing. Boundary testing is testing the software application after defining a boundary or after partitioning. We will define a boundary first and we will check each side of the boundary. That is boundary testing. After defining boundary, let's say here I put a name. I click on, I hit enter. It says okay. Let me put Imran Lemon. It says that username is taken. I remove this one. I only put Imran and hit enter. It says sorry, username must be between 6 and 30 characters. That is a requirement. Let's say we have a requirement. Just for example, let's say we have a requirement, let's say 103, that username must be between 6 to 32 characters. Who write the requirements? Business analyst, product owner, sometimes QA analyst also write the requirement. So let's say there is a requirement 103, that is the requirement number. The requirement says the username must be between 6 to 32 characters. So we will try to create a username that is in between 6 to 32 characters. That is positive testing. And then we will try again to create username that is less than 6. That would be, and system should not allow me to create a username. That would be negative testing. That then, according to the requirement, we will create one user ID that will be between 6 to 32 characters. That is positive testing, and outside of that, that would be negative testing. And system will not allow to create a username that is less than 32 or above 32. Now, in terms of the negative testing for this particular requirement, positive testing is okay. Positive testing is okay, because in the positive, if we go according to the requirement, according to the requirement, if we go that, in the requirement what it says user should be between 6 to 32 characters. So we go to the application, we put a username that is 6 to 32 characters and hit enter, and it takes. Then positive testing passes. Now we also have to do negative testing. When we do negative testing, we go against the requirement. In the requirement, when we go against the requirement, we have to create a username that is less than 6, and system should not allow. Let's say we try to, this is less than 6. I put a username that is less than 6 and hit enter from the keyboard. It did not take. It did not allow. It says it must be 6 to 32 characters. That is negative testing. That's not written in the requirement, but we are going against the requirement. That is negative testing. But negative testing requires boundary testing. Why boundary testing? Because how many numbers below 6? 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How about how many numbers above 32? Unlimited. There is no limit. The numbers which are above 32, that is unlimited. There are unlimited numbers which are above 32. Then we require a boundary. We cannot test all those numbers, because numbers that are above 32, those are unlimited. There are unlimited numbers which are above 32. So we cannot test all of them. We don't have time, budget, and resources to test. Then we have to set a boundary. We will be setting a boundary that we will, for the negative testing, we will set a boundary. We will say below. Now we are setting a boundary. For positive testing, we can also set boundary. For negative testing, also we can set boundary. So for negative testing, I will put a boundary. For 1, this is the one boundary. Boundary is 0 to 6. This is another boundary. Above 32. So I put two boundaries. One is below 6, one is above 6. Now I will try to create a username between this. It will reject. I put 4, so that matches with this boundary. I said 0 to 6 character. I just put 0. This is not written. This is the requirement. This is not written in the requirement. This I defined this boundary, so that I have mentioned this boundary, that 0 to 6 I will check one number and test, and then I will also take one number above 32 and test, because there are unlimited numbers which are above 32. I cannot test all of those, so I will take one and test. So first I took this one. It says it rejected, it didn't take. Now I will take another one. I will put something that is above 32 characters. there are 1, 2, 3, 4. I put something like this. Put something like this. It doesn't take semicolon. Now I hit enter from the keyboard. It takes, that means this this goes in this boundary, 6 to 32 boundary for positive testing. It goes between 6 to 32. So there are 3 boundaries I set. This one I tried to create a username with this boundary, it rejected. I tried to create a username with this boundary, it accepted. This one negative testing, this one positive testing, and then this one also negative testing. And so above 32, I will try to create another one that is above 32. Hope this has. Now hit enter from keyboard. It says sorry, username must be between 6 to 32 characters. So this also, the testing passes. What we have to test, that if we put a username that is above 32, system rejects, system doesn't take. And that what happened, it didn't take. It says sorry. That means this testing passes. So that is boundary testing, means defining a boundary first and test test one time for each boundary. That is boundary partitioning, or that is boundary testing, and defining this a boundary partitioning. That's what I have written here. Boundary value analysis. First, we have to analyze this value and give the partitioning. That would be boundary testing. So I have explained these 3 different types of testing: positive testing, negative testing, and boundary testing. Positive testing is going with the requirement, negative testing is going against the requirement. Boundary testing is, since we have limitation of resource, time, budget, and all that, and there is something that everything cannot be tested, then we define a boundary and we test one from each boundary. That is boundary testing that I have showed here. If we say we want to test each and everything, then we cannot test, because above 32 there are the numbers which are above 32 is unlimited. So we cannot test unlimited. We have to have limit, and therefore this is boundary testing. We define the boundary first and test one from each boundary, and then that would be boundary testing. So I have explained 3 different types of testing in this video. I actually didn't get time enough to make more scenarios, so I will make more in future videos. I will discuss about more different types of software testing, and I hope everyone understand this concept. What is positive testing, what is negative testing, and what is boundary testing. And even in boundary testing, we have this one is negative testing, this one is negative testing, and this one is positive testing. This one goes with the requirement, and this two goes against the requirement. There is another thing that I have read this document. In this document it says positive testing means entering the valid data, and negative testing means entering the invalid data. What they're saying, this is positive regardless of the requirement, whether the requirement is this one or requirement is this one. Entering the valid data is positive testing and invalid data is negative testing. That's what it is written in this website. I do not want to argue. I will go with this definition that going with the requirement is positive testing and we will make test cases and scenarios that goes with the requirement as well as goes against the requirement. Scenarios that goes with the requirement, that is positive testing, and scenarios that goes against the requirement, that is negative testing. And that's all about this video. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.